All right, ladies and gentlemen, I'm very excited for this first chapter of this course. It deals with managing change. And so, as we go throughout this first chapter, I want you to think about a time that you've experienced change, whether that was at work or maybe in your personal life with your family at home or whatnot. But we've all experienced change, and there's different factors that go into how we deal with the change that we are working with. So from a management and leadership perspective, we're going to identify the different types of internal and external forces that we feel toward our organization. Then we are going to identify various roles that people play within this overall change process. And lastly, we're going to basically talk about the different steps of the change process. So first, we have a couple of different types of forces. The first one is external. So this comes from outside of our organization. And what that means is we have no control over our external forces. They're going to happen whether we accept them or not. So oftentimes when we feel external forces on our organization, we need to adapt or be left behind. These are the four major types of change for external. We have technology, the market around us, our competitors, and the workforce in general. So let's break down each one together. The first one is technology. This is one of my favorite quotes, one of my favorite movies, Devil Wears Prada, if you're not familiar with it. But Meryl Streep in this one, she says, by all means, move at a glacial pace. You know how that thrills me. So a glacier is this large chunk of ice that slowly creeps along the surface of the earth. And so technology in the business world is actually quite the opposite. So it is moving so rapidly that sometimes it feels like we can barely even keep up. And so think about some different types of technology changes that we've experienced, let's say in the last 5 to 10 years. One that comes to my mind is the use of apps and ordering our food. So we no longer have to come into Starbucks and wait in line. We can, on our way, text in, or not text in, but order on the app. And when we arrive, our order is done. Whataburger, one of my favorite restaurants. If you haven't had me in class yet, I talk about Whataburger a lot. But Whataburger has recently introduced ordering on their app. And it just, other restaurants, if they don't keep up with this changing technology, they're going to be left behind. The other thing that I think about with technology as far as the food service side is things like Grubhub and all these online ordering that people will then deliver to your residence or to your business. And so, I have a lot of friends who have different various like independent small mom and pop restaurants, and they actually had to adapt to that technology, meaning that they had to figure out a way for those people to come in and pick up their orders more easily so they can go out and deliver them. And so not necessarily just the business adapting to technology, but how our users are using technology. On the hotel side, now we can book our room for the on the app. I can now on Hilton Honors, I can check in on my app, as well as Marriott. You can check in. On Hilton, I can actually select which hotel room I want in the property. And so I can even request specific amenities ahead of time. So technology is moving at a very, very rapid pace. The Vietnam market, okay, so this is about 40 years ago or so. We had, this is a picture of Vietnam. And now, because of the changing of the market, this is what it looks like now. Very tourism heavy, very attractive, and people want to go. And so Vietnam is actually a really big player in the tourism market, in the Asian market. And so now the other Asian destinations have the potential of losing their clients and their guests to Vietnam. And so sometimes the market is changing. We have to adapt as a business. Our competitors, sometimes we'd mentioned a little bit about the different competitors or different things in the technology side, but our competitors can introduce change. And so if they introduce some kind of process or some kind of really good value that the guests perceive as a great value, we could lose our guests and our clients to those other restaurants or hotels. And so, a perfect example of this in the hotels is La Quinta. La Quinta started the continental breakfast, the free continental breakfast. And so they introduced that, and now at most select service hotels, you have the complimentary continental breakfast, or even now a hot breakfast. And so our competitors at one point changed that, and then in order to keep up and remain attractive to other guests, other hotels had to pick up that same practice. And lastly, our workforce is diverse. And so we have people from different racial backgrounds, people from different cultural backgrounds, people from different genders. And so, the primarily leadership historically has been male, and now we see a lot more females in leadership roles. And so this is great. Our workforce is changing, but how do we adapt to that change, and how do we still take everybody's opinion and everybody's perspective, and how do we use that to change and move our organizations forward? These are all of our external forces of change, which we have no control over. It's going to change. Internally, though, we have a couple of different ways that we can change internally. So one, the reinvention, reengineering, and continuous improvement. I'm going to use this course, Management and Leadership, as a perfect example of this process. Okay. Now, reinvention is the most extreme. When I first started teaching at St. Philip's, this course, Management Leadership, the entire semester was based on a feasibility study. So basically writing a business plan. That was the way it was when I was a student. And so when I came in, I'm like, well, I'm just going to keep doing it the way that it was done. That's the way I was taught. And after about a year, I decided, you know what? This feasibility study doesn't really necessarily teach the topics of management and leadership. It talks about writing a business plan, but not necessarily managing a team or leading an organization. And so I completely reinvented the course. That was the most extreme. I completely did away with it, and I brought in this textbook and this more of a lecture format. Now, reengineering, the process of delivery is how I re-engineered this course. So this summer course, for example, is the first time that I have taught this class completely on an online format. So I've taught it before in a lecture format, face-to-face, but now I'm teaching it online. And so I'm re-engineering the process of that. I didn't change anything from when I taught it face-to-face. I'm just re-engineering the process. Okay, so reinvention is the most extreme. And then re-engineering is the just changing maybe one process. Now, continuous improvement is a cycle. It means just that. We're continually improving. So we're always looking at ways that we can make things better. And the biggest thing I use for that is the student surveys at the end of the semester. So I take all that feedback. I realize what worked great. I might keep that. And I look at what might not work as so well as I thought it maybe did. And I can change that for the next time that I teach it. So it's continuously improving. So creativity and innovation. Now, the big point I want to make about creativity and innovation is that we need a reason to change. We don't change just for the sake of changing, okay? And so through observations of the processes around us, through observations of the market, of our competitors, that leads us to innovation and creatively thinking about ways that we can change. And so that creativity is kind of thinking outside the box, which then leads to that innovation. Which leads me to my last slide. And so for this portion, creativity, we all see things in a different way. So I want you to take a moment, count the number of squares that you see on the page. I'm going to give you about 20 seconds to do so. All right, so this is one of my favorite exercises to kind of test creativity. Now, we all see things in a different way, and so just because you don't count the same number of squares that I do doesn't mean one person is more or less creative. It's just you see things from a different perspective, and we'll use that in the next section. So I just want to kind of point out the ones that I saw. All right, here we go. So of course we have the 16 squares right here. But we also have a 17th square, that is this large one. We also have an 18th square here. We have a 19th square here, and a 20th square here. So that's 3 more squares. Now we have 21, 22, 23, 24, 25, 26. Okay? I see 26 squares here. So that's how many I got. How many did you get? Now, as you move on to the next section in the next video, I want you to think about how you would answer this question. I blank change. So do you avoid change? Do you embrace it? Or do you tolerate it?